What happens when the weakest member of the pack becomes its greatest threat? For Sarah Ashford, life had always been measured in small mercies. A kind word from the pack healer, a nod from the baker, the ability to slip through corridors unnoticed. As the lowest Omega in the Silvercrest pack, she'd learned to make herself invisible, to accept the hierarchy that placed her beneath even the pack's servants. Her parents, mid-ranking wolves who'd risen through strategic alliances, had made it clear from her first shift at 13 that her weakness was an embarrassment they bore with gritted teeth. But when Alpha Dominic Thorne stood before the entire pack on the night of the harvest moon and severed their fated mate bond in front of 300 witnesses, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not Dominic. Not the pack. Not even the moon goddess herself could have predicted the force that would be unleashed when those chains finally shattered. The ceremony had started like any other. The great clearing at the heart of Silvercrest territory blazed with ceremonial fires, their light dancing across the faces of gathered pack members. Sarah stood at the edge of the crowd, as always, her plain dress a stark contrast to the finery worn by higher-ranking wolves. The scent of lavender and morning dew that clung to her skin, her natural signature, was overwhelmed by the mingled aromas of hundreds of wolves in formal gathering. She hadn't expected to be called forward. She never was. Sarah Ashford. Beta Marcus's voice cut through the night, and every head turned. Approach the Alpha's platform. The walk through that parting crowd felt eternal. Whispers followed her like gnats. Her wolf stirred within, uneasy, pressing against her consciousness with unusual insistence. Something was wrong. Something was coming. Dominic Thorne stood on the raised platform like a statue carved from marble and arrogance. At 28, he was everything an alpha should be. Powerful, commanding, his dark hair catching the firelight, his amber eyes burning with authority. The scent of forest and embers rolled off him, mixed with ozone and steel, the signature of dominant power barely leashed. Their mate bond had snapped into place 6 months ago during the spring gathering. Sarah had felt it like lightning striking her chest, a golden thread spinning out from her heart to his. She'd seen his eyes widen with recognition, had felt the answering pull, but he'd said nothing, done nothing. And she'd been too terrified of rejection to speak. Now, as she climbed the platform steps on trembling legs, she understood why he'd waited. Members of Silvercrest, Dominic's voice carried across the clearing with the weight of absolute authority. Tonight, I fulfill my duty to this pack by addressing a matter of bloodline and destiny. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. Hope, fragile and desperate, unfurled in her chest. Maybe he was going to acknowledge the bond. Maybe. The moon goddess, in her infinite wisdom, has seen fit to bind me to this Omega. The disgust in his voice was a physical blow. But the goddess's will does not supersede the needs of the pack. Silvercrest requires strength, power, a Luna who can stand beside me as an equal, not a burden, who can barely shift without exhaustion. The crowd's murmur grew louder. Sarah felt her knees weaken. I've consulted with the Council of Elders, Dominic continued, his gaze fixed somewhere over her head, refusing to meet her eyes. And we are in agreement. The mate bond, while sacred, is not absolute. For the greater good of Silvercrest, for our strength and our future, I hereby invoke the right of severance. Time stopped. The right of severance. It was ancient, brutal, reserved for only the most extreme circumstances. To sever a fated bond was to tear apart what the moon goddess herself had woven together. No, Sarah whispered, but her voice was drowned by the gasp of the crowd. Dominic finally looked at her, and his amber eyes were cold as winter stone. I, Dominic Thorne, Alpha of Silvercrest, reject you, Sarah Ashford, as my mate and Luna. I sever the bond between us. You are released from your claim and cast out from my protection." The words hit like silver bullets, the bond shredded, not cleanly, not mercifully, but like a rope unraveling fiber by fiber, each strand snapping with its own distinct agony. Sarah felt it tearing through her chest, ripping away pieces of her soul. She collapsed to her knees, a scream locked in her throat as golden light erupted between them, the visible manifestation of their connection burning away to ash. The pain was indescribable. It felt like dying slowly, like being flayed alive from the inside out. Her wolf howled in anguish, a sound that echoed only in her mind, and then something broke. Not just the bond, something deeper, something that had been locked away inside her since birth. She didn't realize she was screaming until hands grabbed her arms, hauling her upright. The guards' faces were carefully blank as they dragged her off the platform. "Get her out of pack territory," Dominic ordered, his voice carrying no more emotion than if he were discussing livestock. "She has until dawn." Orchestrated narrative progression through Act 1 toward climactic expulsion. Good start. I'm at around 950 words. I need to continue through the rest of Act 1, building to her being cast out. Let me continue with the parents' refusal to help and her actual removal from territory. Then I'll move into Act 2. I need to maintain the cinematic, punchy style and include all the required elements. Through the haze of agony, Sarah saw her parents in the crowd. Her mother's face was turned away. Her father's expression was carefully neutral. Neither moved to help. "Please," she managed, reaching toward them as the guards pulled her past. "Mother." Her mother, Elena, finally met her eyes. "You brought shame to this family the day you were born weak," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "We won't compound it by defying the Alpha's judgment." Her father, Thomas, nodded once. "You have no claim to the Ashford name anymore. You are nothing to us." The rejection from her own blood somehow hurt worse than the bond severing. Sarah stopped fighting the guards. What was the point? They hauled her to the edge of pack territory, to the border where Silvercrest land gave way to the wild forests beyond. The temperature had dropped with nightfall, and the first flakes of snow were beginning to fall, harbingers of the blizzard the weather watchers had been predicting for days. "You're lucky the Alpha's feeling merciful," one guard muttered as they released her. "He could have executed you for the insult of the bond." They left her there, standing at the invisible line that marked safe territory from the wilderness beyond. The scent of hundreds of pack wolves behind her, creating an invisible wall. The scent of snow and pine and danger ahead. Sarah looked back once. The lights of the pack house glowed warm in the distance. Inside, the ceremony would be continuing. Dominic would choose a new Luna, probably Victoria Blackwood, the stunning Beta's daughter, whose scent of cinnamon and iron had been clinging to him for months. Life would go on, as if Sarah had never existed. Her wolf whimpered within her, wounded and fading. Sarah turned and walked into the wilderness, into the storm, into whatever death waited in the frozen dark. Behind her, the guards watched until she disappeared into the trees. Then they returned to the celebration, and Sarah Ashford became nothing more than a cautionary tale. The storm hit with savage fury an hour after she crossed the border. Sarah stumbled through drifts that climbed past her knees, her thin ceremony dress offering no protection against the wind that cut like knives. Her wolf was too weak to shift, the severed bond having drained what little strength she'd possessed. She could feel her body temperature dropping, her movements becoming sluggish. She'd heard stories of rejected mates dying within hours of a severing, their wolves simply giving up, their hearts stopping in their sleep. It seemed like a mercy now. The barn appeared through the snow like a ghost, an ancient structure on the edge of what must have been farmland, long abandoned. Half the roof had caved in, but one corner remained mostly intact. Sarah dragged herself inside, collapsing into moldy hay that still held a whisper of warmth. This is it, she thought distantly. This is where I die. Her vision blurred. The cold was seeping into her bones, making her drowsy. She knew that drowsiness was the beginning of the end, that if she let herself sleep now, she'd never wake. But she was so tired of fighting, of being weak, of carrying shame like a second skin. "I'm sorry," she whispered to her wolf, to the moon goddess, to whatever force in the universe cared about small, broken omegas dying alone in the dark. "I'm so sorry I wasn't stronger." Her eyes closed. The world faded to white noise and darkness, and then warmth. Sarah's consciousness flickered like a guttering candle. She was aware, dimly, of something massive pressed against her side. Then another warmth on her other side, heat radiating from all around her, keeping the deadly cold at bay. She forced her eyes open. Wolves surrounded her. Not ordinary wolves. These were enormous, easily twice the size of even the largest alpha. Their fur was thick and dark, their eyes glowing with an intelligence that was more than animal. She counted them in her delirium. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 massive wolves, arranged in a protective circle around her, their bodies forming a living barrier against the storm. "I'm dreaming," she mumbled, her lips numb with cold. "Or I'm dead." The largest wolf, the one pressed against her back, shifted position, and Sarah felt the distinct sensation of being guarded, protected. These wolves weren't here to kill her. They were keeping her alive. "Who?" she tried to ask, but darkness pulled her under again. When consciousness returned, it came with agonizing slowness. Sarah became aware of warmth first, then of softness beneath her. She was no longer in the barn. She was lying on furs, piled so deep she was nearly buried in them, in a space that smelled of stone and earth and something indefinably ancient. She opened her eyes to a cave. Firelight danced across walls covered in ancient markings, symbols she didn't recognize, but that made her wolf stir with sudden interest. The 10 massive wolves were still there, arranged around the fire, watching her with those 2 intelligent eyes. Then the largest one moved, and his form blurred. Bones flowed like water, not the violent snapping of a normal shift, but something graceful, otherworldly. Within seconds, a man stood where the wolf had been. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, his shoulders broad enough to block the firelight. Scars crisscrossed his chest and arms, each one telling a story of battles survived. His hair was dark, shot through with silver, his eyes a peculiar shade between gray and gold. But it was his presence that stole her breath, a weight of authority that made Dominic's alpha dominance feel like a child playing at power. The scent of aged oak, winter snow, pine, and storm rolled off him in waves. "You're awake," he said, his voice deep and rough as gravel. "Good." We were beginning to worry. Sarah tried to sit up and found her body responding more easily than it should have after her ordeal. Someone had dressed her in warm clothes, soft leather, and fur that fit perfectly. Her wounds had been tended. She should still be dying. "Who are you?" she managed. "Why did you save me?" The man smiled, and it transformed his scarred face into something almost gentle. "My name is Cale Stormborn. I lead the Shadow Guard. He gestured to the other 9 wolves, who remained in their animal forms, watching. "And we saved you, Sarah Ashford, because we've been waiting for you for the last 300 years. The world tilted. "What?" Keiko moved closer, settling onto the furs across from her with the controlled grace of a predator. "Tell me, little Omega, has anyone ever told you why you're so weak? Why your wolf has always struggled to surface? Why your shifts leave you exhausted while others, your age, run for hours?" Sarah shook her head mutely. "It's because your power has been bound since the day you were born," Kale said quietly. "Sealed away by blood magic, locked so deep that even you couldn't sense it. But that bond you felt shatter last night? That wasn't just a mate connection breaking." His eyes gleamed in the firelight. "That was the last lock breaking. And now, Sarah Ashford, your wolf is finally free to wake." As if summoned by his words, Sarah felt it, a presence within her that was vast and ancient, and completely unlike the weak, whimpering thing she'd known all her life. This wolf was powerful. This wolf was furious. This wolf had been caged for 18 years and was ready to break free. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, feeling power beginning to build beneath her skin like a storm gathering strength. Kyle's smile widened. "The prophecy is coming true, Your Majesty. Welcome home." Orchestrated narrative progression through multiple acts and epilogue. I'm around 2,800 words now. I've completed Act 1 and Act 2, and I'm starting Act 3. I need to continue with the prophecy revelation, the explanation of her parents' betrayal, and her first transformation. Then move through Act 4, training, and Act 5, confrontation, ending with the epilogue and YouTube engagement. Let me continue maintaining the style and including all required elements. The cave suddenly felt too small. Sarah scrambled back against the wall, power crackling under her skin like lightning. I don't understand. What prophecy? What? Easy. Kale raised his hands, his voice taking on a tone of command that bypassed her panic and spoke directly to her wolf. Breathe, Sarah. Your wolf won't hurt you. She's been protecting you from inside that cage all these years. Sarah forced herself to breathe. Tell me everything. Kyle settled back, and the 9 other wolves arranged themselves around the fire, their massive forms at ease, but attentive. 3 centuries ago, the moon goddess walked among our kind and spoke a prophecy. It was recorded in the old texts, passed down through generations, though most packs have forgotten it, or chosen to forget. He began to recite, and his voice took on a cadence that spoke of ancient ritual. When silver moonlight bleeds to gold, the Luna's air will break her chains. Born of shame and sorrows cold, she rises where the weak wolf wanes. 10 shall guard her, sworn and true. Through death and storm they'll wait. The golden Luna, born anew, will judge the ones who sealed her fate. The words resonated in Sarah's chest, making her wolf surge forward with recognition. Golden Luna, she whispered. Your eyes, Kale said softly. When you're in your true form, they burn gold like the sun. Not amber, not yellow. Gold. He leaned forward. The prophecy spoke of a Luna born with power so great that even the goddess herself feared what would happen if it emerged too soon. So she decreed that the child would be bound at birth, her power sealed until the moment she was strong enough to control it. My parents, Sarah breathed, understanding dawning like horror. They didn't just reject me. They were visited by the moon priestess when you were 3 days old, Kyle confirmed. Your mother was told that her daughter carried a gift that could reshape the balance of all werewolf kind. But such power, emerging uncontrolled in a child, could destroy everything. So they agreed to the binding. Blood magic, woven by the priestess herself, that would lock your wolf away until the key was turned. The mate bond, Sarah said hollowly. That was the key. Its severing was meant to happen, Kyle nodded. The rejection, the pain, the brush with death, these were all part of your awakening. Without suffering, without being pushed to the absolute edge, the binding would never have broken cleanly. Your parents knew this. They raised you as weak on purpose, made you believe you were flawed, ensured you'd be rejected when your fated mate appeared. A wave of power washed over Sarah, and she realized it was coming from inside her, from her wolf, who was radiating pure rage. They tortured me my entire life, she said, her voice shaking. They let me think I was worthless, let the pack abuse me, all because of a prophecy? They acted from fear, Kyle said. Fear of what you might become, fear of the change you represent. But their fear doesn't excuse their cruelty. One of the other wolves, a female with silver-streaked fur, shifted. She was tall and lean, her dark hair braided with bone charms. Your parents made a choice, she said, her voice carrying a heavy accent. But that choice ends now. You are no longer bound. You are no longer weak. She dropped to one knee. My name is Astrid Wintermoon, and I am honored to serve the Golden Luna. One by one, the other wolves shifted, massive warriors, each bearing scars and an aura of deadly competence. They knelt as Astrid had, speaking their names like oaths: Theron Nightshade, Lyra Shadowsong, Darius Ironhide, Celine Moonscar, Ronan Fleetfoot, Mira Earthbound, Caius Stormcaller, Finn Wildroot. Kyle remained standing, his gray-gold eyes fixed on her. The Shadow Guard has existed in secret for 300 years, passing the duty from generation to generation. We are not bound to any pack. We serve only the prophecy, and now, we serve you. Sarah's wolf surged again, and this time she couldn't contain it. Power erupted from her core, flooding her limbs with strength she'd never known. Her bones began to shift, not with the painful snapping she'd always experienced, but with a sensation like water flowing, like becoming liquid and reforming into something new. It's happening, she gasped. Kale, I can't. You can, he said firmly. Let her out, Sarah. Let your wolf show you who you really are. The transformation took her like a tide. Her bones flowed and reformed, growing longer, thicker. Fur erupted across her skin, not the dull brown she'd always had, but something that shimmered like moonlight on water. Her muscles expanded, power singing through every fiber of her being. She felt herself growing larger, larger than any wolf she'd ever seen, her body restructuring into something between animal and myth. And then it was complete. Sarah stood on 4 legs in the center of the cave, and she had never felt so right in her entire life. Her senses exploded. She could hear the heartbeat of every wolf in the cave, could smell the ancient stone and the pine forests miles away, could taste the electricity in the air. She felt powerful. She felt complete. She felt furious. A howl built in her chest, rage and grief and triumph all woven together, and when she released it, the sound shook the cave walls. The fire flickered and nearly went out. Stones fell from the ceiling. The Shadow Guard dropped fully into submission, their foreheads pressed to the ground. When the howl faded, Sarah looked down at herself. Her paws were massive, her claws like silver knives. She caught her reflection in a pool of water near the back of the cave and froze. Her fur glowed with an inner light. Silver white with threads of gold running through it like veins of precious metal. But it was her eyes that stole her breath. They burned gold, true gold, like molten sun. And when she met her own gaze, she felt the weight of destiny settling onto her shoulders like a crown. Finally, a voice said in her mind, and Sarah nearly fell over in shock. "Who? I am your wolf." The voice was female, ancient and amused. "Or rather, I am you. The part of you that has been locked away since birth. My name is Aurelia, and I have been waiting a very long time to speak with you, little one." "You can talk," Sarah thought dumbly. "My wolf can talk. This is normal for what we are," Aurelia said gently. "Look at them, Sarah. Look at how they kneel." Sarah turned her attention back to the shadow guard. Kyle had dropped to one knee now, his head bowed. "She is the matriarch," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "The golden Luna has risen." The title resonated through Sarah like a bell. Matriarch, not Luna. That was a pack title. Matriarch. That was something bigger, something ancient. "What am I?" she asked her wolf. "What you were always meant to be," Aurelia replied. "The balance to alpha dominance, the heart to their strength, the first of a new bloodline that will reshape what it means to be wolf." Sarah shifted back to human form, and it was effortless, like slipping from one skin to another. No pain, no exhaustion. She stood naked for a moment before Mira quickly wrapped a fur cloak around her shoulders. "Thank you," Sarah said, and her voice came out different, stronger, carrying an undertone of power that made the others straighten with attention. Kyle rose and met her eyes as an equal for the first time. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been asleep my entire life," Sarah said honestly. "Like I'm finally awake." She looked at each of the shadow guard in turn. "You've been waiting for me, protecting the prophecy. I'm grateful. But I don't know how to be what you need me to be." "That," Kyle said with a slight smile, "is what we're here to teach you." The days that followed blurred together into a tapestry of discovery and transformation. Kale and the Shadow Guard trained her relentlessly, but not in the harsh, punishing way she'd been taught to expect. They treated her like something precious that needed to be honed, not broken. "Your power is instinctive," Astrid explained during their third morning, as they stood in a clearing outside the cave. "You don't control it through force, but through intention. Feel the wolf inside you. She wants to emerge, but she'll wait for your invitation." Sarah closed her eyes and reached inward, finding Aurelia waiting like a patient guardian. "Ready?" "Always," her wolf replied. The shift came like breathing. One moment human, the next moment wolf. No pain, no struggle. Sarah was getting faster each time, the transition becoming as natural as walking. "Excellent," Theron rumbled, his gruff voice approving. He was the oldest of the guard, his face mapped with scars. "Now hold the form while moving. Predators must be able to shift mid-hunt." They ran through the forest, 10 massive dire wolves and 1 glowing Luna wolf, and Sarah discovered the pure joy of movement. Her legs ate up a distance effortlessly, her senses painting the world in scents and sounds that made her human perception seem blind and deaf by comparison. But it wasn't just shifting, she learned. "You have gifts beyond transformation," Lyra said one afternoon, her gentle hands guiding Sarah's attention inward. "You're an empath, Sarah. You can feel the emotions of other wolves, sense their pain, their fear. More than that, you can heal." "Heal?" Sarah repeated skeptically. Lyra held out her arm, where a fresh gash from training gleamed red. "Try. Focus on the wound. Feel my pain as if it were your own. Then, soothe it." Sarah placed her hand over the wound, closing her eyes. She could feel it, a sharp, burning sensation that wasn't hers, but belonged to Lyra. She imagined it cooling, the flesh knitting together, cells remembering their wholeness. Golden light flowed from her palm. When she opened her eyes, the wound was gone. "By the goddess," Lyra breathed, flexing her unmarked arm. Sarah, that's incredible. All matriarchs can heal, Kale said from where he leaned against a tree, watching. But you're already stronger than the legends described. Your power isn't limited by touch. You'll be able to heal multiple wolves at once, from a distance, once you learn control. Each day brought new discoveries. She learned she could project her voice directly into the minds of other wolves, a command ability that bypassed their conscious resistance. She learned she could sense pack bonds, see them as golden threads connecting wolves to each other and to their alphas. She learned that her presence calmed aggression, that beta wolves submitted to her on instinct, that even the massive Shadow Guard treated her word as law. But more than power, she learned about family. The Shadow Guard, she discovered, had spent centuries training for this moment. But they were also just people. Finn had a terrible sense of humor and carved clever wooden figures during evening fires. Mira could cook a rabbit 300 different ways and sang haunting songs in a language Sarah didn't recognize. Ronan and Caius were brothers who bickered constantly but moved in perfect synchronization during training. Selene was quiet and watchful, but had a laugh like thunder when something truly amused her. And Kyle was patient and fierce and impossibly strong. He pushed her harder than anyone else, but was always the first to catch her if she fell. He taught her how to command, not through domination but through earning loyalty. He shared his knowledge of pack politics and territorial law, preparing her for the role she'd eventually have to claim. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" Sarah asked him one evening, as they sat by the fire while the others slept. "Everyone I've ever known treated me like I was either weak or dangerous. You treat me like I'm just myself." Kyle looked at her, firelight playing across his scarred features. "Because I've been waiting my whole life to meet someone who could see me as an equal," he said quietly. "My father led the Shadow Guard before me, and his father before him. I was raised knowing my purpose was to serve the prophecy, but the prophecy didn't speak of serving a master. It spoke of guarding a queen who would need us as much as we need her." He reached out, his large hand covering hers. "You're not weak, Sarah. You never were. And you're not dangerous. You're necessary. There's a difference." The bond that formed between them wasn't like the fated mate bond she'd had with Dominic. This was chosen, deliberate, built on respect and shared purpose, and something that felt like it might, in time, become love. "The Shadow Guard serves you," Kyle said. "But if you'll have me, I'd like to be more than just your guard. I'd like to be your partner, your chosen mate, if you'll accept me." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Kyle. I choose you too." Their chosen bond snapped into place, different from fated bonds, but no less powerful. It was a golden thread woven from free will and matched intentions, and it settled into Sarah's chest like a missing puzzle piece finally finding its home. The others woke to find them sitting close together, and the celebration that followed was fierce and joyful. The Shadow Guard had waited 300 years for their matriarch. Now they'd welcomed her mate as their alpha. But celebrations couldn't last forever. On the 14th day after her awakening, as Sarah practiced her healing on a bird with a broken wing, Finn crashed through the undergrowth, his eyes wide with alarm. "Scouts!" he panted. "From Silvercrest! They found our trail!" The blood drained from Sarah's face. She'd been so focused on training that she'd almost forgotten about the pack that cast her out, about Dominic, about her parents. Kyle was on his feet instantly, his expression hardening into something lethal. "How many?" "One scout now, but he ran when he saw me," Finn reported. "He'll go back to the pack. They'll know she's alive." Sarah stood slowly, and she felt Aurelia stirring within, ready for battle. How long? A day, maybe 2 before they mobilize, Kyle said. He looked at her steadily. You don't have to face them. We can relocate, establish ourselves elsewhere. No, Sarah said, and her voice carried the weight of command. They rejected me, cast me out to die. Let them come. It's time they learned exactly what they threw away. The shadow guard formed up around her, and Sarah saw pride in their eyes. Then we prepare, Kale said. They'll come with force. Dominic won't risk looking weak by sending a small party. Expect 20 wolves, maybe more. Let them bring 100, Sarah said, feeling power crackling beneath her skin. I am the Golden Luna. This is my territory now, and I will show Silvercrest what a real matriarch looks like. The war party arrived at dusk 2 days later. Sarah stood in the clearing outside the cave, the shadow guard arranged in formation behind her. She was in human form, dressed in leather and fur that marked her as something between warrior and royalty. Her hair, which had always been ordinary brown, now held subtle gold highlights that caught the dying light. The scent of forest and embers reached her first, then the sound of paws on frozen earth. Then they emerged from the tree line, 23 wolves, all shifted, all massive alphas and betas from Silvercrest's fighting force. At their head ran a wolf she recognized by scent. Alone. Dominic. The war party spread out in an aggressive formation, surrounding the clearing. The largest wolf, Dominic, shifted back to human form, and others followed his lead. He stood in the center of his wolves, naked and unashamed, as was normal after shifting, his amber eyes blazing with fury. Sarah Ashford, he said, his voice carrying across the clearing. You were exiled from Silvercrest territory. These lands border our borders. You are in violation of pack law. Sarah didn't move. These lands are unclaimed wilderness. No pack has held them for over 50 years. Under territorial law, I have every right to be here. She knows pack law, Beta Marcus muttered beside Dominic, surprise clear in his voice. You should be dead, Dominic said, taking a step forward. The bond severing should have killed you. How are you? His eyes widened as he finally looked at her. Really looked. What happened to you? Sarah smiled, and it was not a kind expression. I woke up. A female wolf pushed forward. Victoria Blackwood, beautiful and cruel, her black hair cascading down her bare shoulders. The scent of cinnamon and iron hung around her like a warning. Look at her, Dominic. She's just an Omega playing dress-up with rogues. Let me handle this. She didn't wait for permission. Victoria shifted mid-leap, her black wolf form hurtling toward Sarah, with claws extended and jaws open. Sarah didn't move until the last possible second. Then she shifted, faster than thought, her glowing white and gold wolf form erupting into being, and met Victoria midair. The impact should have sent both wolves tumbling. Instead, Sarah caught Victoria by the throat, her massive jaws clamping down just enough to immobilize, and slammed her into the ground with enough force to create a crater. Victoria's wolf whimpered in submission, going completely limp. The entire clearing froze. Sarah stood over Victoria's prone form, and the scent of power washed over every wolf present. Not aggression, not violence, but absolute authority. She defeated Victoria effortlessly in a single move, and hadn't even drawn blood. She shifted back to human form, standing over Victoria with gold eyes blazing. Submit or leave my territory, she said quietly. Those are your only options. Victoria shifted back, trembling, blood trickling from where Sarah's teeth had pressed against her throat. I submit, she gasped. Forgive me. Go, Sarah said, releasing her. Tell Silvercrest what you saw here. Victoria scrambled away, shifting back to wolf form and fleeing into the forest without looking back. The remaining Silvercrest wolves watched her go, then turned their attention back to Sarah. Several were trembling, their eyes wide with a recognition that went deeper than conscious thought. Her scent, lavender and morning dew and wildflowers, had changed. Now it carried an undertone of ancient power that made their wolves press low in instinctive submission. "What are you?" Dominic breathed. Behind Sarah, the shadow guard shifted. 10 massive wolves emerged, each one dwarfing even Dominic in his alpha form. These were not normal wolves. These were dire wolves, creatures from legend, their eyes glowing with supernatural intelligence. They moved into position around Sarah with the precision of a trained military unit, their combined presence radiating enough power to make the very air shimmer. The Silvercrest wolves began to back away, their ears flattening in terror. "I am what you threw away," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the clearing with perfect clarity. "I am what your pack has forgotten. I am the Golden Luna, heir to the matriarch bloodline, and you are in my territory without permission." Dominic's legs gave out. He fell to his knees, his head bowing automatically. Around him, every single Silvercrest wolf dropped into submission, some shifting back to human form, others simply pressing their bellies to the ground. "Mercy," Dominic gasped. "Golden Luna, we didn't know. You didn't care to know," Sarah corrected, walking toward him slowly. Kyle shifted back to human form and moved with her, a silent shadow at her right hand. "You saw a weak Omega and decided I wasn't worth the effort of understanding. You severed our bond in front of the entire pack, condemned me to death, and went back to your celebration without a second thought." "I was wrong," Dominic said, and tears were streaming down his face now. Real remorse, real horror at what he'd done. "I was wrong, and I beg forgiveness. I beg." "Look at me," Sarah commanded. Dominic raised his eyes and flinched at what he saw there. Not hatred, not rage, something far more terrible. Disappointment. "You made a choice that night," Sarah said softly. "You chose power over destiny, pride over wisdom, and in doing so, you freed me to become what I was always meant to be." She crouched down, meeting his eyes at his level. "I could kill you now. Every wolf here would accept it as just. You condemned me to death. I have the right to return that judgment." "Yes," Dominic whispered. "I accept whatever punishment you decree." Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then she stood. "I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in justice." She raised her voice so every wolf could hear. "Dominic Thorne, you are no longer Alpha of Silvercrest. Your title is forfeit. You will spend the next year serving as an Omega, the lowest rank in your pack, and you will learn humility. If, after that year, you've proven yourself worthy of redemption, we'll speak again." Gasps rippled through the Silvercrest wolves. "Beta Marcus," Sarah continued, turning her attention to the older wolf who'd been Dominic's right hand. "You knew what I was. The Council of Elders knew. You let the severance happen anyway. You are stripped of your rank and banished from Silvercrest. Find a new pack or live as a rogue. I don't care which." Marcus bowed his head in acceptance, his face ashen. Sarah looked at the remaining wolves. "As for Silvercrest pack, hear me now. This territory, from the northern river to the eastern mountains, from the southern meadows to the western cliffs, this is my land. I claim it under the law of ancient right. You may remain as you are, but you will answer to me. Any pack within my territory will follow my laws, which are these. No wolf will be rejected for weakness. No Omega will be abused. No mate bond will be severed without the consent of both parties. Any alpha who rules through fear rather than earning loyalty will answer to me. And any pack that harms children, abuses their wolves, or breaks the sacred laws will be dissolved. A wave of power washed over the clearing as she spoke, and Sarah felt the land itself responding to her claim. This was her territory now, recognized by the laws that governed all wolves. I am Sarah Ashford, the Golden Luna, matriarch of the Shadow Guard, she declared, her voice ringing like a bell. This is my territory. These are my laws, and this is my judgment. The Silvercrest wolves bowed in acceptance. Even Dominic, broken and humbled, pressed his forehead to the ground in submission. Cale stepped forward, his hand finding hers. Let it be known, he said, his deep voice carrying authority, that any who wish to challenge the Golden Luna's claim must first pass through the Shadow Guard. We have waited 3 centuries for her. We will not allow her to fall. The 10 dire wolves behind them raised their heads and howled in unison, a sound that echoed across the mountains, declaring to every pack within hearing distance that a new power had risen. When the howl faded, Sarah looked at her former packmates one last time. Go home, she said. Tell them what you saw here. Tell them the Golden Luna has risen. And tell them mercy is a gift I give once. Don't make me regret it. The Silvercrest wolves retreated, their formation broken, their pride shattered. Dominic was the last to leave, casting one final look back at Sarah, at what he'd lost, at what he'd thrown away, before following his pack into the darkness. When they were gone, Sarah's legs finally gave out. Kyle caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her easily into his arms. You did well, he murmured against her hair. You showed strength and mercy. You showed them what a true leader looks like. Sarah leaned into his warmth, feeling the chosen bond between them humming with approval. Is it over? This part is, Cale said, but your reign is just beginning, my Luna. The days that followed brought change, like a river breaking through a dam. News of the Golden Luna spread across the territories faster than wildfire. Packs sent emissaries, some to swear loyalty, others simply to see if the legends were true. Sarah met with each one in the great clearing that was becoming her court, flanked by the Shadow Guard, dispensing justice and wisdom with Aurelia's guidance whispering in her mind. 3 weeks after the confrontation, her parents arrived. Sarah was working with Mira on expanding their settlement. They'd built proper structures now, a compound that could house the growing number of wolves seeking to join her territory, when she caught their scent on the wind, lavender and fear from her mother, oak and shame from her father. She met them at the border with only Cale beside her. Elena and Thomas Ashford looked older than she remembered, their faces lined with more than just age. They knelt as soon as they saw her, their heads bowed, and the scent of genuine remorse hung heavy in the air. Golden Luna, Elena said, her voice breaking, we come to beg forgiveness. Sarah felt nothing. No anger, no grief, just distance. These wolves had given birth to her, but they'd never been parents. Not really. Speak, she said simply. Thomas raised his head, tears tracking down his weathered face. The Moon Priestess came to us when you were 3 days old. She told us what you were, what you would become. She said your power was too great for a child to control, that without the binding, you would destroy yourself and everyone around you. His voice shook. She said the only way to save you, to save the world from you, was to lock it away until you were strong enough to master it. So you made me believe I was weak, Sarah said flatly. You treated me like I was worthless. You watched me suffer. We thought, Elena choked on the words. We thought if you believed you were an Omega, if you learned humility and patience, you'd be ready when the power finally emerged. We thought we were protecting you. You were protecting yourselves, Sarah corrected. From the possibility that I might become more than you could control. The truth of her words hung in the air, undeniable. You're right, Thomas said quietly. We were afraid, and our fear poisoned everything. We failed you as parents. We failed you as wolves. And we cannot ask for your forgiveness because we don't deserve it. Sarah looked at them, these small, frightened wolves who'd shaped her childhood with cruelty disguised as necessity, and felt Aurelia stirring within her. What do you want to do? Her wolf asked gently. I don't know, Sarah admitted. Part of me wants to banish them, send them away to live with their shame. And the other part? Wants to give them a chance to be better, to learn what they did wrong and actually become the parents they should have been. Kael's hand found hers, offering silent support whatever she decided. You will work, Sarah said finally. You will serve in my territory as healers and teachers. You will help raise the orphaned pups we're taking in. Show them the kindness you never showed me. You will spend every day proving that you understand what you did wrong and are trying to make amends. If, after 5 years, you've shown genuine change, we'll speak again about forgiveness. Relief and gratitude flooded their faces, though tears continued to fall. Thank you, Elena whispered. Thank you, Golden Luna. We will not fail you again. Don't thank me, Sarah said. This isn't a gift. It's a test. Don't waste it. They bowed and left, and Sarah watched them go with emotions too complicated to name. You gave them more mercy than they deserved, Kael observed. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But they're still my parents. And maybe if they can learn, others can too. Spring came to the mountains with an explosion of green and gold. The compound had grown into a proper settlement, the court of the Golden Luna, as the other packs had begun calling it. Wolves came from every territory seeking sanctuary, justice, or simply a chance to serve something greater than pack politics. Sarah stood on the balcony of the main hall, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, and felt contentment settle into her bones. Kael was in a meeting with the territory scouts. The Shadow Guard was training a new generation of warriors in the yard below. Her parents were in the healing ward, working with sick pups and learning patience. Everything had changed. Everything was still changing. You look thoughtful, Astrid said, appearing beside her with the silent grace of a hunter. I was thinking about Dominic, Sarah admitted, about how different things might have been if he'd just accepted me. Would you want that life? Astrid asked. Being Luna to a pack that didn't respect you, mated to a male who chose you out of obligation? No, Sarah said immediately. But I wouldn't have wanted this path either, if someone had offered me a choice. The pain, the rejection, the near death. She trailed off. Sometimes the paths we wouldn't choose are the ones that lead us home, Astrid said softly. You're exactly where you're meant to be, Sarah, and you've built something here that will outlive us all. Kael emerged onto the balcony, and the chosen bond between them sang with warmth. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and Sarah leaned into his solid strength. The scouts report movement near the Blood Moon altar, he said quietly. Something is stirring in the old territories. Ancient magic. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Blood Moon was 3 months away, a time when the veil between worlds thinned, when old powers could break through. Another prophecy? She asked. Maybe, Kael said, or maybe just the next challenge. Whatever comes, We'll face it together." Sarah looked out at her territory, at the wolves below who'd chosen to follow her, at the future spreading before them like an open road. She was no longer the weak Omega who'd been cast out to die. She was the Golden Luna. She was the matriarch. She was exactly who she was meant to be. "Let it come," she said, feeling Aurelia's agreement rumbling through her. "Whatever darkness is rising, we'll meet it with light." The sun set behind the mountains, and in the growing darkness, Sarah's eyes glowed gold. And so Sarah Ashford's journey from rejected Omega to Golden Luna became the foundation of a new era. She proved that weakness is often just power waiting to be recognized, that mercy can be stronger than vengeance, and that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in lifting them up. She transformed pain into purpose, rejection into revolution, and her story echoed across every pack territory as a reminder. Never underestimate the wolf you cast aside, for she might just return as a queen. What would you have done in her place? Would you have shown Dominic mercy, or demanded retribution? Would you have forgiven your parents, or sent them away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you would have handled the confrontation. If you enjoyed this story of transformation and triumph, please give it a like, share it with fellow werewolf romance fans, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss when we release the next chapter of Sarah's journey. Because this is just the beginning. The blood moon is rising. Ancient evils are stirring. And the Golden Luna's greatest test is yet to come. Thank you for listening to this epic tale of love, loss, and legendary power. We'll see you in the next chapter, where darkness comes calling, and Sarah must decide just how far she'll go to protect everything she's built.